Okay, so next up we've got Eliot's The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. So basically, I'm going to refer to this as love song, but it establishes an alienating physical environment that fosters this ambivalence and emotional turmoil, right? So we'll start off by looking at the physical environment, right? So we've got this really alienating physical environment that fosters a real sense of turmoil. So we've got a dirty depiction of the atmospheric smog, which really reflects the modernist city life, as the yellow fog rubs its back and lingered upon the pores. So we've got this really dirty imagery which is being personified to suggest that the lively, usually natural romantic descriptions of passion and freedom have been inverted, and they're now obsolete as we've got the filth of the city now actually permeating within the individual's domain. We've also got, in terms of form, I think it's really interesting to see that within the last three sentences, Eliot actually uses the Petrarchan form, which was developed by Renaissance poets, and it was really famously used by Romantic poet William Wordsworth. So he's actually subverted its actual usual form as this, really romantic poetry into his poem in order to resonate this pessimistic, bitter view of the modern world, where we have lingered till human voice wake us and we drown. So he instead makes it a really hopeless image and really degenerates what would usually be used to portray a romantic image. So we've got through the rejection of romanticism and through this emphasis on the pessimism within the world within the poem, an insight into one of the key modernist ideas which influenced Eliot, which is the destruction that came from urbanization and this resulting sense of disconnection between the individual and their world. I think when we're going off of that, we've got this stream of consciousness style that Eliot uses within his poem. So this really confuses the reader, and this is really disorientating to read for the first time, because the poem, the speaker within the poem, he drifts from one subject to the next, and he doesn't really give warning, and it's, he kind of bounces around all of these different images. And what that does is that really alienates us as the reader, and it evokes this sense of dislocation within us. And I suppose that really imitates how the speaker feels within their own society and within this new, really dislocated modernist city. Another quote or another piece of evidence that you could use in order to show the alienating physical environment is, "Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats." So here we've got this dark imagery, and it really indicates this sense of isolation that's felt within the streets of the city. It doesn't create any sense of warmth or any sense of connection. It really just highlights the isolation that was common within the modernist era and within the cityscape. So then, in terms of psychological for love song, we've got Eliot's poetry within this really shaped by his modernist ideas, where he really rejects the inherent systems and values of the modernist era, and instead he shifts towards this sense of detachment and emptiness within society. So we've got this emergence of philosophical questions about the value of life during this era, because the persona rhetorically questions, do I dare, and do I dare to turn back and descend the stair? So the repetition of do I dare, it really enhances the reader's understanding of the ambivalent sentiment within this era, and it also depicts this sense of hesitation to progress forward from the war, especially from the war, and as a result we see a sense of hopelessness and a sense of detachment and really a lack of engagement between the individual and their world. We also see actually a sense of Eliot's own self-degradation through this image of a bald spot in the middle of my hair, which really highlights the persona's flaw when describing himself to be a common man. If we go back to a more general sense, we've also got in the room, the women come and go talking of Michelangelo, and this is actually a repeated phrase throughout the entire poem. But it relates, I guess, what I found really interesting is that this intertextual reference to Michelangelo, who was, you know, this really amazing Renaissance painter and architect, I think what it does is it highlights this sense of stagnation within the modernist era. So it's almost this sense that nothing's happening now, so we're going to have to go and dwell in the past and, you know, try and soak up these past positive experiences and appreciate that art because we don't have anything at the moment. And I think that really shows this this sense of alienation and this sense of stagnation that really permeated within the modernist era. Another thing to pick up on is how the persona says, "Let us go then, you and I." So there's this use of direct second person where it really feels like Prufrock is talking to the audience, and it really incorporates the audience and engages them within the poem. So that, combined with the form of stream of consciousness, really it really encourages, or it really compels the reader to experience the same alienation and the same confusion that was common within the modernist era. And I think that's one of Eliot's really effective ways of demonstrating the dislocation and the really negative state of mind that was common within the modernist era. So we've also got the simile, like a patient etherized upon a table, right? So there's this lack of feeling associated with this sick world, and it really creates an idea of numbness that comes with life. So I guess that can link back to the whole idea of stagnation, but it also links to this feeling of alienation and a lack of vitality. And that actually can really nicely complement one of your quotes on the physical, because we see that as a result of the lack of vitality within the physical environment, there's this lacking connection between the individual and their world. We've also got the assonance of 100 indecisions and for 100 visions and revisions, which really demonstrates this constant indecision within the common person within the modernist society. And I guess that suggests this continuous over-analysis and these unfulfilled thoughts. So that can actually link to a lack of meaning or a lack of purpose within the modernist era, and it demonstrates their their state of mind. And finally, I think another really powerful quote that you can use is this allusion to Shakespeare's Hamlet, when the persona says, "I am not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be." So basically, for those of you who haven't studied Hamlet, it's essentially a play where Hamlet just talks about whether he wants to seek revenge or whether he shouldn't. That's the majority of the play. So I think by incorporating this intertextual allusion, what Eliot does is he really reflects on the passive nature of the people within the modernist era, and therefore the decline of civilization. And it's also a pun which mocks Hamlet's soliloquy to be or not to be, and that really reflects the futility of both action and inaction. So ultimately, the completely meaningless and futile world of the modern cityscape. So just to sum up the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, I mean, there are lots and lots of quotes you can pick from. These are just a couple of examples. Basically, within the physical environment, we see a subversion of the usual romantic images, and this is done through both form and both through his direct imagery, where he really creates an image of the physical city as quite dirty, and as a result, there's this sense of detachment. And then in the psychological sense, we really see the individual's lack of engagement within the city and this sense of meaninglessness and futility as a result of that. Okay. My throat hurts. Oh, goodness.